Welcome back to Squawk Box. Disney will release earnings tomorrow under the helm of the company's new CEO, Josh D'Amaro. Joining us right now, Tom Rogers, former NBC cable president, who's also Versant CNBC advisor and a CNBC contributor and the founder of this network. So what do you think? How are you thinking about Disney today relative to the other big media companies?
Well, Disney's done something the other traditional media companies have not done, and the streaming side of its business when it comes to revenue now exceeds the traditional side, and that's a big milestone. I'd say they need some real acceleration, though, when it comes to the streaming side of the business. Things have stalled somewhat,
right.
And I think the new CEO, Josh D'Amaro, needs to really make a statement about what is the core of Disney that he's going to focus on. There are a lot of disparate parts. 41% of all their content goes into sports. Their content spend goes into sports, has nothing to do with the flywheel. He's presumably a flywheel guy sitting there.
So would you spin ESPN? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well,
I mean, that's been on the table for a very long time.
It has been.
And
it's
every
not
time
something
said,
they seem to want to pursue, although he hasn't come out flatly on that. I do think he needs to talk about how ESPN and sports is going to contribute to a family bundle of some kind that's going to accelerate the whole. To have it out there as a separate entity that somehow does not contribute to the entirety of moving Disney along as a company dedicated to family programming, it's a little hard to get your hands around how they're going to allocate all their capital in a way that the streaming side of the business, Disney Plus, consumer products, the parks are really going to benefit from the sports side.
There's really no way then. I mean, sport, you have to spend a lot of money in sports. If it continues to be in the sports business and it opts to continue to do that, by nature of that business, most of the spend is going to have to happen in sports no matter what, right? I mean, there's no capital allocation sort of decision to be made there, is there?
Well, when you're putting $60 billion into the parks and 41% of your content spent into sports, what gets squeezed is general entertainment. Right. And then its engagement and viewing has kind of stalled. The #1 show on Disney Plus is Bluey, not a Disney production.
Right.
And you start saying, okay, well, then they need more entertainment programming.
Okay, so if they need more entertainment programming in this universe right now, is there someplace something you'd acquire at this point? Do you say to yourself, I mean, there's not a lot of other streamers you could acquire. Peacock's probably the only sort of independent that's left, unless you want to do Lionsgate separately or something. But some of that content's tied up.
I'm not sure just acquiring general entertainment programming solves the issue of a Disney flywheel and contributing to the whole of a broader family bundle that's accelerated by how they're spending. I think you really have to think about where are they going to allocate capital to developing new Disney franchises? Mm. Are they spending enough money to do just that? There hasn't been a new Disney franchise in a while, and I think if they can figure that part of the business out and spend more in that direction.
But don't you think they would say to themselves, from a kind of capital basis, that there's a much higher margin for them to actually spend their money on the cruise lines, to spend their money on the parks? I mean, like that's sort of the big question.
Right.
Do you spend your money on a margin basis? Are you going to do better with the streaming piece, or are you going to do better in real life? And right now, real life, I think, is a much higher margin business.
Well, I think that's what he has to clarify. Where is the money best spent? Because things are getting squeezed. It makes no sense to me that the #1 show on Disney Plus should not have anything to do with something that Disney is producing as part of a new franchise that it is able to then export to the other parts of Disney. Now, when it does come to the parks and all, we do have war impact issues. I can't think of an area that's more dependent on fuel costs than people traveling by airplane to the parks internationally, summer travel, cars, and gasoline prices. Cruises, of course, fuel a huge component. So far, I'm not sure the impact is visible. It's hard for me to see that if this continues for any while longer, that won't be a bit of a casualty for Disney.
There's a Bloomberg report that the CEO was looking to break down the company's silos and create some sort of a super app that connects all the business that includes streaming, parks, tickets, merchandise, et cetera. I don't know if you have any sort of thoughts on the super app idea, but just this notion that it's too siloed, the business is too siloed, and you should start breaking down those barriers in order to really unlock the value. I feel like it sort of gets at your notion of building a franchise, because that franchise could feed every area of the business.
Well, and it goes to how do you bring sports into a family bundle to use all that money to accelerate that. I think there's an important notion there. First, they got to solve for putting Disney Plus and Hulu together and coming out with a combined service that looks a whole lot better than the two pieces of streaming that they've had that really haven't related to each other. I think if they can accomplish that well and improve their tech and recommendations, they can build on that to a broader portal. But I think that it's the very same notion. If you can build a portal that people understand, put all the pieces together, you're defining Disney in a way that I think the pieces begin to feed on each other and make a whole lot more sense to investors.